Can you hear me? Mr. Mayor, you can keep the mic first, and then we'll just, we haven't started with you yet. So we'll start with you. Okay, this question is, what is the one key project or program which needs to be implemented to spur economic growth and increase employment in Hagerstown?
I guess I would reject the premise of that question. I don't think there is any silver bullet project or program that will lead to the absolute revitalization of Hagerstown. But there are so many that are part of a plan that everybody can see through the work that we did with Urban Partners. We have 8 catalyst projects identified in that plan, many of which are already underway in one form or another. And so I think, that process that we went through, over 130 hours of engaging the community, creating a shared vision that people had a stake in, I think has really been effective in increasing investor confidence. And sure, it's too bad those developers were talking to Bob and they didn't call me, because like I said, if I don't know anything about it, I can't do anything about it. But I do think having something on paper, a written plan that people can refer to, it has brought the synergy together. It's brought many different partners together and spurred private investment along with it. That is ultimately the goal. I do believe that sometimes we have to spend money as a government in order to attract private investors. If we don't think we're worth it enough to spend money in our own community, to invest in our own community, then there's no way outside investors are going to have that same belief. So again, I don't think there's any magic bullet. I don't think there's any one project or program that will lead to revitalization, but it will be achieving the shared vision that everybody buys into and has a stake in.
Thank you. We can go with Mr. Quarterman, and then I'll bring it back around.
Thank you. As with a lot of these questions, as David had put as well, there's no one answer. Again, if there was one answer and one solution, I'm sure this would have been resolved many administrations before us here now. That being said, going forward, we need to continue to take a collaborative approach. We need to embrace our realtors. We need to engage our property owners, and we really need to work with our developers. As far as one specific thing, I know that this has been hit on a couple times already by some of the current administration. The Patterson Hotel, Mike Fitzgerald's building downtown, and the revitalization that WLR property did above the Flying Pie were all part of the First Third program, which is a great program. The problem is that program no longer exists. We've decided to divert our funds in other directions. It's been said here earlier this evening as well. I agree with David that we do need to spend money sometimes, but we need to spend it smartly. We don't need to be the developer. We don't need to be the contractor. We need to work with the developers and contractors. So the long answer short is I would really like to see the First Third program come back, and would like to see a continued collaborative approach with our community developers, property owners, and business owners. Thank you.
I have thoroughly investigated, did my research on the Urban Partners plan, the 8-point plan. Not saying that there aren't good elements of that plan, because there are. And most of those good elements came off of Rodney Tishue's bookshelf in his office of the last 25 or 30 years of other plans. And the Urban Partners just sat down, threw them all on the table, and picked out 8 things to do. The walkway is not something that I haven't seen before. The convention center in downtown is not something that I haven't seen before. All these things have been brought to the council over the last probably 30 years. One of the things that we aren't doing in the city of Hagerstown currently, and the question was asked right at the very end of the last session, a yes or no question, is we're not spending money wisely. We're spending plenty of money, $15.3 million over the last 4 budgets, more than I did in 2012 in my budget. But we aren't seeing a return on that investment. And so that's a problem. Great great to invest in our community. It needs to happen. But we can't be the only ones investing. And in this Urban Partners Plan, this 8-point plan of, I believe the number was $125 million over 10 years, we are the only ones so far in the first 2 years of this implementation that's putting money in this plan. So it's difficult when you talk to people about investing in our city, especially when government's doing it and not getting a return on that investment. Now, again, we do need to invest in our city. We just have to make smart investments. And unfortunately, we haven't been doing that lately.
The number is technically 128 million, and we have a state, county, and private folks that are set, as Delta Wilson will tell you, to make a significant investment in 5 of the 8 components of that plan, which we pitched to state appropriation folks last week. That said, when I came into office, there were 5 items identified that I think I've stuck to for the 4 years, and that's neighborhood stability, fiscal accountability, intergovernmental cooperation, the post-industrial East End redevelopment, and selecting a theme for downtown, which I think said earlier. I want to be selfish here for about 30 seconds and pitch something that has seemed to fall on deaf ears for 4 years. Every week, hundreds of our parents, thousands of our children, leave this community to go to play at indoor sportsplexes in Frederick, in Winchester, in Gettysburg, in Gaithersburg, Rockville. All of those areas have very successful indoor sportsplex programs. You know, an indoor field, 2 turfs. If any of you out there have kids or grandkids, you've been to some of these venues. I think that it is long past time that Hagerstown and Washington County look for a facility exactly like that, construct a facility exactly like that in this community, so that the thousands of children that we send to play at these venues every week play that right here. And I'll give you this one example. In the interview for administrator candidates, one of the folks spoke of a minor league team within their jurisdiction that they currently were employed. And they said the #1 draw of that and the savior of that project was not the minor league baseball affiliated organization improvement, but was the youth-related activities that build their hotels and their restaurants every day of the week.
I think the question was looking for what was the one single item that we would look to. And I think it has been identified and will continue to be identified, both on the short term and the long term in Hagerstown. And that is one word: education. And who you vote for counts. I will tell you, when the university system was proposed for downtown Hagerstown, out of 5 council members, there were 2 of them that opposed it. And all it would have taken is one other council member to say no, and we would not have a university downtown. Education is the answer, especially to our downtown. Student housing, expansion of the university, expansion of the Barbara Ingram School. You want to put people downtown and the people you want downtown. Give us college students, postgraduate students. That's the short term. The long term, when we talk about Section 8 housing, when we talk about all these other problems that were brought up before, the answer is education. We have got to educate our children. That is a long-term goal. And that is the ultimate answer for our community. But on the short term and the economic side, I say it's education.
I agree with you. Education is very important. But having been a realtor for 30 plus years, I think something that would really help is taking care of those vacant buildings. They need to be sold, they need to be renovated. And if you have an investor coming into Hagerstown and he sees a building he likes, and on this side it's vacant, this building's vacant, and on this side there's riffraff. So does he buy that property? He has no guarantee that if he puts all this money into this house, that building's still vacant and the riffraff's going to cause him problems. So how do you know where to sell a house in Hagerstown? Do you look up each house on the other side and see who lives there? So there's got to be some way of getting these buildings sold to investors who want to invest money. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's going to take the council, the elected officials in Annapolis, and state, federal, to come together with some ideas of what we can do to get the buildings sold. Right now, everything looks good because people are buying there on Potomac Street near Bulls and Bears. That whole block is probably sold. So each person is buying near those buildings. So what can we do to get the buildings sold?
So the question of what is the key project or program to spur growth in Hagerstown to increase employment? Of course, education is always important for many reasons, but we also need to be business friendly because businesses provide jobs. The pop-up shops were a huge success downtown, and I encourage us to continue doing them and create programs like that because it builds the community together, but it also builds a chance for businesses to go out and show what they have. We need a strong economic development department, that works with our businesses in order to open so we can create more jobs. It creates stronger neighborhoods, it creates homeownership. And I think that we also need to focus our community on shopping local. We have all these restaurants downtown that are fairly busy on some nights, but you go to Olive Garden and wait 2 hours. Well, Olive Garden is a chain restaurant, no offense to Olive Garden, but we should be shopping local. We should be visiting 28 South or Pizza and Pretzel Creations or the Broadex, these locally owned businesses that put money back into our neighborhood, which adds employees. The busier they get, they can expand. And I think that's something that we don't do very well right now that we should really be looking into.
Thank you. The next question starts with Mr. Quarterman. Mr. Quarterman, in the event of a natural disaster like the snowstorm last winter, would you guarantee representation at the command center? The question was written that we did not have any during the storm. I don't know the validity to that, but that's the question.
I'll attest to it. That was that blizzard, that 4 foot of snow we got all at once. And they had a command center set up, and they only had state and county.
Well, that's a difficult question for me to ask, or not being in that arena yet. That being said, I would hope that, current council or future council would be involved if any type of natural disaster did occur in our city or our community. I'm sure that there are a lot of them are referred to some of the higher forms of government in the area. However, the question asks, could I guarantee that? I think a guarantee is a bit of a stretch. It's a guarantee that every single council person and or mayor would be able to be in such a position. However, I would like to see the administration being involved when a situation like that would occur. Thank you.
I don't necessarily think that the mayor or council has to be present, although there should be a city presence, be it our public works or someone like that. Mike Spiker, who's the director of utilities or whatever. I believe that there should be some representation from the city of Hagerstown in a disaster such as that, because everybody has got to work together and be coordinated when we're dealing with that's a pretty tough natural disaster.
May I interject? That was actually my question. What it was we had streets, and some people, part of one of my businesses is blood transfusions. And people don't necessarily care if it snows or blizzards. And I know it makes it difficult, but we had to plow out through it. Some people's streets weren't plowed for a week, but I was able to finally get a hold of the city police, and they were able to get somebody to plow so we could get the blood transfusion. But just to have representation, that was really the question. The city needs to have representation. How would you make sure that that happens? Not necessarily a guarantee. So just to take the ambiguity out of it, thank you.
I think it's a far-reaching assumption to think that simply because there is not a body in a specific room, that our public safety personnel are not out conducting the business of clearing streets, responding to calls and things like that. You know, being the manager for the town of Myersville, I can tell you, we just received our reimbursement from the feds for that particular storm. That was the third largest snowfall in Maryland history, and that's why we received the federal funds. And living in the tri-state area, I can tell you that it took us about a week and a half to identify contractors for snow removal. We'll just take that specific item. When you talk to folks in that arena, as I do on a regular basis, they were calling out farmers with tractors, many of which come from the tri-state area, north of us, south of us. They had 70 and 81 shut for an extended period of time. And the individuals that have this type of equipment, in this specific instance, had difficulty getting out of their own roads to respond to this event. And it took longer than expected, not just in this community, but in every community within the state of Maryland and the tri-state area that had this impact. That's just a fact of the dynamics of the amount of snowfall that happened within that specific period, which I would also remind that not only was it the third largest, but it was the fastest amount, time frame wise, of the three largest storms that I'm referring to.
Where's the command center?
Thank you. Is the question, are you saying there was no personnel staff from the city of Hagerstown at all?
This is correct. What
Okay.
happened, and the county would say you have to get a hold of the city, you're in the resident, and the state was there, so that's why I put the question out.
There are a whole lot of, this has all been done by the county emergency command center. Everything's in place. Why there was not a city representative physically there, I can't address that answer right now. I'd like to find out. I will say, however, having said that throughout that entire time frame, elected officials are getting emailed on an absolutely regular basis, if not an hourly basis, of what's going on. And I might add, you know, just last Tuesday, we had the 9/11 ceremony and community preparedness. The word that everybody has tried to tell everybody is, in the case of a natural disaster, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to be self-sufficient for at least 3 days, because if you think government is going to be able to take care of you in those first 3 days, it's not going to happen. And if we get another 40-inch snowfall in this community, it will be a week before all the streets are taken care of. You would want to shoot us if you found out how much money it would cost us to be prepared to get everybody out of a 40-inch snowfall in a day. So I can't answer the question of why there was no city staff there. That's an interesting question. I will find out an answer. But suffice it to say, there was communication throughout that time frame of elected officials and staff.
I think there should be someone from the city at the command center, because I think it makes people feel safe and they know their councilman's there taking care of them. So yes, I think someone should be there.
I agree that I think someone should be there. Everyone wants to be able to hold someone accountable. With that said, I don't feel comfortable saying that I guarantee that, because to be quite honest, I don't know the backstory either. So for me to sit up here and say I can guarantee that, I can't make that promise. I would need to do more research like Lou. I would need to find out why there wasn't someone there, what was really going on. I'm not familiar with the situation, so I'm not comfortable promising something I can't follow up with.
Well, first I'd like to say I agree with Bob. I don't think it should be elected officials sitting in the command center, because that's why we pay our employees such good money to make these kinds of decisions and do that work. Second of all, I agree with Kristen that you know, in this day and age, like Lou said, we're receiving communication constantly through email. I like to say my mobile phone is my mobile office. So was there somebody physically at the command center? I don't know. This is the first I'm hearing of it, but what I do know, like Councilmember Metzner said, is that we were receiving constant updates. It's already mentioned, it was a snowstorm of historic proportions. Certainly, I think our public works and public safety did an outstanding job, and you know, those, you know, I don't know what the protocols are. I haven't reviewed that emergency response plan, but if there wasn't somebody there, it's probably because they couldn't get there, or they weren't able to make plans to be there for 3 days. So again, I think what I saw was exactly what was mentioned. If there were people with medical emergencies, we had the police, the fire, public works, made an all-out effort to get those people to where they needed to go as quickly as possible. But I can tell you, I also received people complaining about, emails complaining about, I needed to get my son to the airport. You know, and so people have to be realistic in those situations, and as Councilmember Metzner said, you have to be prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you pass it to Mr. Brucci, please? Okay, Mr. Brucci, given that we've seen a 40% increase in drug crime since 2013, what is your plan to deal with the drug epidemic and associated crimes in the Hagerstown city area?
Well, let me tell you, I think that I'm a firm believer that the day reporting center that will be opening up, that Sheriff Mullendorf has fought so hard for, will help us in a way to be able to. The last thing we can't arrest ourselves out of the problem that we have currently right now with our heroin problem in Hagerstown, Maryland, and Washington County. So to be able to have an alternative where you don't take someone out of their home, out of their job for a certain period of time, and then they get fired, and then that whole cycle begins all over again. I believe that that's a crucial step, a crucial first step in addressing this issue. I also firmly believe that you know, we need to treat the addicted and punish the dealer. I believe that our sentences aren't strong enough when it comes to dealers. Again, that's nothing that the mayor and council can change, and has to come from our state legislation. I talk at times about a zero tolerance policy, and there are people up here at this table who will complain that I say zero tolerance, and what does it look like? I will tell you that it will look like whatever our new chief believes that he can enforce and do it efficiently. I'm not talking about creating new laws, or I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually focusing on the laws that are currently on the books that we don't focus on, or that we don't think are big enough crimes. The problem is that, you know, small crime turns into big crime. And as that billboard out on Dual Highway says, it talks about injuries, but you know what? If it's a small crime and it happens to you, guess what? It's not a small crime anymore. It's crime. So we have to work with our police department and try to find ways that we can enforce those laws that are currently on the books and focus more heavily on that.
I'm going to be a bit contrary and unpopular here. I'm not a firm believer that this day reporting center is the answer. As a commissioner, we received a report on that from Franklin County. I believe that's where they got the idea. They said, look, you know, 60% of folks that go through that program graduate successful and diminished recidivism. However, what she didn't say, and there were 5 judges in the room at the time we had that meeting, and I asked the question, well, how many people complete the program? 40%. So if there's 20 people and only 40% get through, and only 60% don't repeat, what's that, 6 to 8 people out of 20? So I'm just not a firm believer that will create a huge enough impact. And the other thing I'll say, and we talked about a little bit here earlier, is the amount of individuals that this community absorbs, creating a very apparent imbalance in the stability of this community as it applies to addictions-oriented services. My uncle who lives in Potomac Towers will tell you 13 years ago when he moved in, it was 70% seniors. It is now 70% not seniors, many of whom have addictions-related afflictions that are protected through mental health, federal protections to mental health. It is not the living environment that he moved into 13 years ago. We cannot continue to advance successfully as a community if we continue to be the dumping ground for these types of programs. It's just a fact.
Thank you. I think everybody in the room is aware that this isn't a local problem. This is a national problem. It's a major national problem, even worse in West Virginia. It's the first time in history that drug overdoses and drug issues are more of a rural issue than a metropolitan issue. I've been a member for a significant number of years in Washington County Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which is made up of all of our judges, representatives of the Health Department, the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff, the Chief of Police, Parole and Probation, the State's Attorney's Office, the Warden of the Jail, the Public Defender's Office, and others. Been struggling with this very issue for years. We created a juvenile drug court, which has been successful. We have been trying to have an adult drug court, which the majority of counties have, which we have not been able to fund yet. The day reporting program was a program pushed by this group for a number of years until it finally happened. We're going to need state and federal help, though. A major problem that we have are physicians that are pill mills, so that people can go to 10 different physicians in 10 different days and get narcotic drugs. Most of the reporting is voluntary at this stage of the game. There has to be a central reporting data system to keep track of narcotic medications being prescribed by physicians. It's the physicians mainly, not the pharmacies, that need to do this. And on a voluntary basis, it works to a limited degree, but it really needs to be a mandatory thing. It is amazing how many of our children are becoming addicted to heroin through the use of narcotic medications that are given for a good reason to begin with that turn into an addiction process.
I can't add very much to what Lou has already said, but I would think that we need to go into the schools and educate the children from grade 1 and up. And I think that would help with some of the things that are being done now.
We definitely, as we all know, have had a major increase in drug crime. We have a major heroin problem that is being discussed pretty openly tonight. And it's not a local problem, it's an everywhere problem. The issue is, like Lou said, and if you look at the CDC website, 68 to 72% of heroin addicts begin with prescription pill addiction. And until we start educating our youth, it's going to continue. Because when a doctor gives you something, you trust that it's the right thing to do, but unfortunately it's creating a dependency that's leading to heroin addiction that is just, it's killing us. And we did it with cigarettes back, in the 80s. You know, all you saw was the anti-cigarette ads, and people were saying it causes cancer, it's killing us, it's killing us. We need to do the same thing around here. We need to be educating our youth, because this drug does not discriminate. It's not just Hagerstown, it's not rich, it's not poor, it's not black, it's not white, it's everywhere. So our police are doing a fantastic job, but unfortunately we're all seeing the consequences of this addiction, whether you've lost a loved one or you're watching a loved one battle, or whether you're dealing with the petty crimes, the minor thefts out of vehicles, things that from people trying to feed their addiction. So I would like to help eliminate the stigma. No one wants to say I'm an addict. No one wants to say my child is an addict. I mean, that is an absolutely horrible sentence to have to speak. But until we can start saying it out loud and start helping these people get the help that they need, we're not going to make progress. So I personally, I can't change laws. I can't put things into effect, but I can help say it is okay. Let's help get you treatment. Let's help get you back into a normal life. Let's get you in a job. Let's get you the counseling you need, and make it so people aren't afraid to speak out anymore, because we're not going to solve this problem by being quiet about it.
can't help make laws yet.
Yes.
You know, this drug problem is a serious social problem. One of the, you know, if it is true that in fact drug crime has increased 40%, then I would say that much of that has to do with what's been mentioned before, which is the prescription drug problem. When I attended the heroin town hall at Hager Hall, there was a statistic that we in the United States have 5% of the world's population, but we consume 80% of the opioids manufactured in the world. So the counselor in me asked the question, what kind of pain are people trying to avoid? Why do people get addicted in the first place? Well, so we have to address some of those issues, which has to do with education. It has to do with providing young people opportunities to take positive risk, whether it's participating in sport or the band, going out for a play, or doing something more risky and adventurous. We have to make them feel like they can get their thrills other than these negative behaviors like drugs. The prescription drug monitoring system, however, when it was implemented in Maryland, was a big part of when we saw petty crimes so that people could get money to support their habit and they're buying a cheap street alternative of heroin. I do support what our police are doing with data-driven decisions with policing. They use that data to find out what's going on in neighborhoods, to see patterns and to prevent the crime from happening. And hopefully to get the people the help that they need if they are willing to admit that they have an addiction. And I agree with Emily, we have to reduce the stigma in order to make that happen. I do support the Day Reporting Center. Thank you.
I don't think there's a whole lot more to add than has already been discussed here already on this particular topic. As regards to the Day Reporting Center, I would support that as well. It is not the answer. Nothing's the answer. Is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. Based on the statistics that Mr. Alshire discussed, 6 to 8 people, I'll take 6 to 8 people this year. Maybe next year we can grow that to 12 to 15 people. It may only be a drop in the bucket, but it's a step in the right direction. Public safety has to be at the forefront of any budgetary discussions going forward. Not only is this drug epidemic, the crime rate that is related to the drug epidemic, but it's also just related to quality of life crimes that Mr. Birchie referred to. I would support, an enforcement of some existing laws and regulations that we have. Not to say that we should lock up every single person just for jaywalking across the street or anything. But let's have a conversation. Let's run them through the databases. Let's look to see what may or may not be, available in other jurisdictions before they come to Hagerstown. So, long story short, I think we need to continue to take a collaborative approach and support the Hagerstown Police Department to the best of our abilities. Thank you.
Okay, this is the end of, we're really running out of time. I'm going to push it though just as much as I can. I just have...
The library will close in 15 minutes.
Okay, everybody's going to get their 1 minute and then we're going to rush out. But like